A very good morning and welcome to the Breakfast News here on RSTV. I'm Tracy Shilshi, getting you all the top stories of this hour and also what's likely to make news in the day ahead. Let's start with the headlines. Sonia Gandhi to hold two rallies today in Bihar. Lalu and Nitish are likely to share the stage with the Congress president. Finance Minister on a 10-day US and Peru tour. Jaitley to pitch for coordinated global action on black money during the IMF World Bank meetings. Two blasts rock the outskirts of Nigeria's capital Abuja. The number of casualties is not known yet and no group has claimed responsibility so far. US President accuses Russia of strengthening IS militants in Syria through their strikes. Moscow disagrees while Syrian opposition says non-IS rebels are bearing the brunt of Moscow's attacks. And South Africa draw first blood, defeat India in the first T20 at Dharamshala by 7 wickets. Well, our top focus is campaigning for the Bihar elections with a tough challenge ahead for the Congress and the Lalu Nitish-led Grand Alliance. Congress President Sonia Gandhi will start the election campaign by addressing rallies in Bhagalpur and Gaya today. The first rally is in Kehalgaon, from where Congress Legislative Party leader Sadanand Singh is seeking a re-election and will go to polls on the 12th of October, which is, of course, the first phase. The second rally is in Wazirganj, a seat held by the BJP at present, and will go to polls on the 16th of October, which is the second phase. Congress sources saying that both RJD Chief Lalu Prasad and Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar are likely to share the dais with Sonia Gandhi at one or more of the rallies. Chief Minister Nitish Kumar, of course, will be addressing a rally in Jamui later in the day. Nitish addressed a series of rallies in Samastipur and Begusarai on Friday, and we'll give you details of that in a bit. Meanwhile, while addressing a rally in Samastipur, Nitish had mocked the NDA for not divulging their chief ministerial candidate for the upcoming Bihar polls. He in fact said that the day is not far away when the BJP would fight Gram Panchayat elections as well on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's name. The BJP-led NDA, of course, already deciding to launch a campaign blitzkrieg by holding a staggering 500 rallies, with Prime Minister Modi alone addressing about 20 to 22 big meetings. All right, for more, we've got our correspondent Kriti Mishra joining us on the phone line this morning from Aurangabad. Kriti, what's the sense that you're getting as far as expectations are from Sonia Gandhi's rally? Because we do know there have been some big ones, of course, from Nitish, Lalu and Modi as well.
Right, Tracy. So Sonia Gandhi would be trying to galvanize party workers and congressmen to really go ahead all for these elections, because Congress, a relatively smaller of the Grand Alliance dished by Nitish Kumar and Lalu Prasad combined, is eyeing 4 seats in the 26th constituency in Magadh division. And Gaya, of course, as we're talking, where Sonia Gandhi would be addressing a rally, it has 10 assembly seats, and Gaya is the largest district of the division. Now, the party last time had contested on its own and had to remain content with just 2 runner-up slots. So this time around, Sonia Gandhi is, of course, will leave no stone unturned. As far as we know, she would be.
All right, we seem to have lost that link there with Kriti, who's, of course, giving us details of what we can expect from Sonia Gandhi's rally later in Bhagalpur and Gaya. Of course, those rallies coming a day after a huge rally that we saw by Prime Minister Narendra Modi yesterday that took place in Banka district. He, of course, leading the charge for the BJP, and he was, in fact, not just leading the charge for the BJP, expressing confidence also that the BJP will win and assured that he will remain with the state every step of the way towards its development. Take a look.
A double celebration this Diwali is what the Prime Minister is promising for Bihar. Campaigning for his party in the Banka constituency, Narendra Modi said BJP voters will celebrate the festival and the poll results this time.
Bihar, दो दिवाली मनाएगा, दो दिवाली मनाएगा. एक तो जिस दिन नतीजे आएंगे और फिर कुछ दिन बाद जो दिवाली आएगी वो दिवाली.
Modi said India can't progress unless Bihar moves forward. He said his recent US visit showed him what the state's people are capable of.
अमेरिका में रहने वाले बिहार के मेरे भाई, वो बिहार को आगे देखना चाहते हैं, वो बिहार को बदला हुआ देखना चाहते हैं, वो बहुत आगे बढ़े हैं लेकिन वो कहते हमें खुशी तब तक नहीं होगी जब तक पूरा बिहार आगे नहीं बढ़ेगा।
Modi also attacked the Nitish Kumar government in the state. He claimed that the state has been held hostage by the ego of a few people.
मुझे तो चिंता है कि मैं 1,65,000 करोड़ रुपया देने का तय करूं तो भी शायद इनका अहंकार इतना होगा वो तो घोषणा कर देंगे हमें नहीं चाहिए, मोदी का पैसा नहीं चाहिए। अरे ये पैसा मोदी का नहीं है, ये बिहार की जनता के हक का पैसा है।
Stating that India's progress is not possible without the progress of Bihar, the Prime Minister said the central government had opened its coffers for the state's progress. Banka is the first place that Modi chose to campaign in for the BJP after the Election Commission announced the poll dates for the state. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And the war of words, of course, continued with Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar too addressing a rally in Samastipur yesterday, calling for a united front against the BJP. He alleged that the party had given tickets to people with criminal antecedents.
सारे उम्मीदवारों का नाम एक साथ महागठबंधन के उम्मीदवार के तौर पर घोषित किया गया। यह है महागठबंधन में एकता और मजबूती। और दूसरी तरफ बीजेपी का गठबंधन आपस में एक दूसरे पर न जाने कितने आरोप प्रत्यारोप लगाए लोगों ने।
On to other news now, and Finance Minister Arun Jaitley will leave for a 10-day visit to the US and Peru today. He will attend the IMF World Bank meetings. Jaitley will reach New York on the 4th of October, and during his US stay, he is scheduled to give a lecture at Columbia University as well. The Finance Minister will later head to Peru to attend the annual Fund Bank meetings to be held in Lima from the 9th to the 11th of October. Of course, the Fund Bank meetings will be attended by RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan, Economic Affairs Secretary Shaktikant Das and Chief Economic Advisor Arvind Subramanian. Jaitley will also participate in the G20 Finance Ministers meeting and BRICS Finance Ministers meeting on the sidelines of the Fund Bank meetings. The minister is expected to pitch for coordinated global action to deal with the black money menace. Besides, India is likely to pitch for quota reforms in the IMF and World Bank. India has been seeking a voice in and quota reforms in multilateral bodies like the IMF and World Bank so that emerging economies could have more clout in the working of these institutions. Meanwhile, India has also pledged to make its economy more energy efficient and cut its carbon emissions. This is over a 75% jump over India's present voluntary commitment. Here are the details.
Come 2030, and India will have reduced its carbon production per unit of GDP by 33 to 35%. In the intended Nationally Determined Contributions or INDCs released Thursday, the Union Environment Ministry also pledges to make the economy more energy efficient.
हमारी ऊर्जा की खपत विकास के तुलना में अब जो 20% कम कर रहे हैं 2020 तक, वो अब 35% कम करेंगे, यानी 75% की छलांग लगाएंगे हमारे लक्ष्य में। ये बहुत ही एक महत्वाकांक्षी टारगेट है।
Citing the need for financial support from the UN, the minister said India would target to achieve 40% installed capacity for electricity from non-fossil fuel by 2030. The pledges are broadly in line with expectations, keeping in mind that emerging economies such as India's have resisted setting specific targets to cut emissions. But India has no plans to establish carbon trading like China. Despite the commitment on clean energy, the statement also stresses that coal would continue to dominate power generation in the future. There are also plans to develop 25 solar parks, supply solar pumps to farmers and convert all petrol pumps in the country to solar. There will also be an increased focus on developing hydro and nuclear energy.
We are not part of the problem, but we want to be part of solution. India is not part of the problem.
India is the world's third largest emitter of greenhouse gases. Achieving the targets that have been set will be an uphill task for a developing economy like India, and neither will this come cheap. India will need about $206 billion by 2030 for implementing adaptation actions.
जलवायु परिवर्तन में कुछ देशों का ऐतिहासिक रूप से बड़ा हिस्सा रहा है, इसलिए उत्तरदायित्व में भेद तो करना ही होगा. कॉमन बट डिफरेंशिएटेड रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी के सिद्धांत को हम नकार नहीं सकते।
The Climate Change Summit in Paris in December will focus on achieving a comprehensive and equitable agreement. With inputs from Vipin Chauhan, Bureau Report for Rajya Sabha TV.
Back in India, transporters continue to protest for the third day today over their demand for scrapping the present toll system. In fact, transporters remain off roads, affecting supply of goods in various parts of the country as the government refused to budge on their demands. Supply of essential goods such as milk, vegetables and medicines, though, have been kept out of the purview of the indefinite strike called by the apex transporters body, the All India Motor Transport Congress. The impact was visible on supply of raw materials for various industries in Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan, Punjab, Haryana, Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, among other places. The AIMTC claims to have 87 lakh trucks and 20 lakh buses and tempos across the country under its fold. Another truckers' body, the All India Transport Welfare Association, though, has kept away from this strike. Transporters will also be protesting at Jantar Mantar in Delhi today to protest for their demands. With that, let's take a look at what else is likely to make news in the day ahead. In fact, in Bihar, let's start with that. BJP President Amit Shah will be meeting party workers for the districts which are going to polls on the third phase on the 28th of October in Patna today. 6 districts going to polls in the third phase are Patna, Saran, Vaishali, Nalanda, Bhojpur and Buxar. Shah, of course, will be arrived in Bihar on the 29th of September in a week-long visit in the poll-bound state to energize and mobilize party workers. 24 Congress MLAs from Gujarat, led by Shankar Singh Waghela, will meet President Pranab Mukherjee to urge him not to give an assent to the controversial anti-terror bill passed by the Gujarat Assembly. The bill, which has been returned without giving any assent by the earlier presidents twice, was recently cleared by the Union Home Ministry and sent to the President with a recommendation to approve it. The issues of beef ban and rehabilitation of flood victims are expected to dominate the 8-day autumn session of the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly, which starts today. The session is set to be a stormy affair as the opposition parties are geared up to corner the 7-month-old PDP-BJP coalition government on many issues, especially the controversial beef ban issue and delay in rehabilitation of flood victims. The UN General Assembly's 70th Annual General Debate will conclude today. Over 150 world leaders descended in the United Nations on Monday, where issues like sustainable development, climate change, refugee crisis, terrorism and tackling the ISIS occupied center stage. With that, a quick break here, but up next, we're getting international news. Stay with us.
Who should be in power is left to be determined by the people.
I want all minorities to have an honorable place in the Union of India.
Declaration was that zamindari would be abolished, for which fair compensation would be paid.
There is no dispute whatsoever that the executive should be separated from the judiciary.
The protagonists of Hindi, in their enthusiasm, have gone too far.
Greatest danger in the future may not be that the center will interfere too much, but that the units may resent the guidance of the center.
The future constitution of India would be a pyramidal structure based on the village panchayats.
I move that the constitution be passed.
The poll juggernaut rolls out in Bihar. Modi's NDA takes on Nitish's Grand Alliance. Who will win this most important election battle since 2014? Watch Verdict 2015, Monday through Saturday on Rajya Sabha television.
Welcome back. Let's get you some international news, starting with Nigeria, where 2 bombs went off on the outskirts of the Nigerian capital, Abuja, late on Friday. This is the first such incident in over a year in the capital city. There was an unknown number of casualties. The bomb in Kuje went off near a police station, while the other one in Nyanya detonated in a crowded area not far from the site of 2 blasts in April and May last year that killed at least 90 people. Before then, there had not been an attack on the capital in the last 2 years. There was no immediate claim of responsibility for the attacks. Beatrice Dubbley is an Abuja resident who heard the blast.
There was a bomb blast. I called in Kuje Central Market around 10:45. That was the actual time that the bomb blast took place. So I was at home by then. So they called. When I come out, I saw fire. The place was still burning. So everybody was afraid to go in there.
Honestly speaking, we heard of multiple explosions at Kuje and Nyanya, and of course we have ambulances and rapid intervention vehicles prepositioned in different directions in Abuja, and we dispatch all of them to the scene to help evacuate the injured to the hospital.
And now to the U.S. 24 hours after a gunman went on a ruthless shooting spree in a community college in Oregon, federal agents say that they've recovered 13 weapons in total from his house and the site. Unconfirmed reports say that the gunman was a 26-year-old named Chris Harper Mercer. The small-knit community in Oregon is annoyed now with the Obama administration for playing politics over the issue.
Families, friends, and an entire community continue to grieve for Oregon massacre victims. Families underwent the painful ordeal as the police released the names, ages, and the hometowns of victims one by one. But surprisingly, the police refused to reveal the gunman's name. They said it will only encourage others.
We expect that the medical examiner will release the name of the shooter sometime later today. Again, you will not hear anyone from this law enforcement operation use his name. I continue to believe that those media and community members who publicize his name will only glorify his horrific actions. And eventually, this will only serve to inspire future shooters.
Initial investigations reveal the gunman was in possession of 13 weapons and carried 6 at the time of the rampage. Few details about the shooter's motive and with the school have emerged. Even as the residents cope with the tragedy, they're angry at the politicizing of the issue. President Obama reiterated his anger at gun violence at a press conference on Friday, calling on the public to press their politicians to support reform. Republican presidential candidate Jeb Bush sparked a controversy by his "stuff happens" comment on the mass shooting.
Yeah, we're in a difficult time in our country, and I don't think more government is necessarily the answer to this. I think we need to reconnect ourselves with everybody else. It's very sad to see, but I resist the notion. And I had this challenge as governor because look, stuff happens. There's always a crisis, and the impulse is always to do something, and it's not necessarily the right thing to do.
I think the American people should hear that and make their own judgments based on the fact that every couple of months we have a mass shooting. And in terms of, and they can decide whether they consider that stuff happening.
Victims' families and the officials in the community dismissed the debate, saying their priority is to heal the community. The incident, latest in a series of high-profile mass killings across the United States, has fueled demands for stricter gun control. The United Nations, too, called on the US to take action and reduce the appalling toll on human life. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
The United States has warned Russia of greater difficulties ahead, saying that their actions are in fact strengthening the IS militants in Syria. Obama said Russia is failing to distinguish between Islamic State and more moderate insurgents in Syria, which would cost them heavily in the future. But Russia insists its campaign is only targeting the IS and will be much more effective than the US-led strikes.
The United States accusing Russia of causing more damage with their latest air campaign in Syria than fighting terrorism. US President Barack Obama said the Russian bombing is driving moderate opposition underground and only strengthening the Islamic State militants in the region. Obama warned both Russia and Iran of grave dangers ahead if they follow existing policies.
A military solution alone, an attempt by Russia and Iran to prop up Assad and try to pacify the population, is just going to get them stuck in a quagmire. Ruthless dictator. Regardless of what Mr. Putin said, was that he doesn't distinguish between ISIL and a moderate Sunni opposition that wants to see Mr. Assad go. From their perspective, they're all terrorists, and that's a recipe for disaster.
Russia's decision to launch an individual air campaign has heightened tensions between the two countries. But Obama conceded that neither Russia nor the United States would engage in a proxy war because of their differences over Syria.
I want Russia to be successful. This is not a contest between the United States and Russia. It is in our interest for Russia to be a responsible, effective actor on the international stage that can share burdens with us.
Moscow insists the airstrikes are only targeting IS positions. It says the campaign could last for 3 to 4 months. The warning by the US came as the French, German and Russian leaders met in Paris. The meeting was called to discuss peace efforts in Ukraine, but was overshadowed by Syria.
Sur les frappes, j'ai fait remarquer au président Poutine que là où nous avons, nous, identifié des frappes, il n'y en avait qu'une sur Raqqa et d'autres qui étaient sur des secteurs qui étaient contrôlés par l'opposition. D'où la position de la France, qui est de dire que nous devons, et pour en faire la vérification, frapper là où est Daesh, pour ceux qui ont décidé de frapper.
Wir haben gemeinsam sehr deutlich gemacht, dass natürlich IS der Feind ist, der zu bekämpfen ist. Und auf der anderen Seite, dass es für Syrien eine Lösung geben muss, die auch und insbesondere die Interessen der Opposition widerspiegelt. Und diese Opposition hat unsere Unterstützung.
The Syrian opposition suggests it is the non-IS rebels that are bearing the brunt of Russian attacks. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now let's take you through what else is making news across the world in World Wrap. Leaders of Ukraine, Russia, Germany and France gathered in Paris to discuss peace efforts in Ukraine for the first time since they agreed on a deal for Ukraine in Minsk in February. The so-called Normandy 4 meeting assessed all elements of the deal, including the staging of local elections in the rebel-held regions and the withdrawal of heavy weapons from the line of contact. They agreed the pull-out of light weapons would start on Saturday. Poroshenko said that this process would then continue in stages and should be completed within 41 days. An increasing number of migrants are heading for Greece as the weather starts to worsen in the region. Thousands of migrants are using the so-called Balkan route to reach Europe. With temperatures set to drop in the coming weeks, dangers of crossing the Aegean Sea between Turkey and Greece will further increase. Thousands travelled through Croatia that had been overwhelmed with migrants influx after Hungary closed off its border with Serbia. Colombia confirmed that one of the world's most wanted drug lord, Victor Ramon Navarro, also known as Megateo, was killed in an Air Force bombing raid. The U.S. had offered a $5 million reward for his capture. Navarro was also the leader of the remnant faction of the leftist guerrilla group, the EPL. Though the group disbanded 16 years ago, Navarro is believed to have pushed the ban into cocaine trafficking so that they could procure weapons. Houthi supporters took to the streets of the Yemeni capital to denounce Saudi-led coalition airstrikes on civilians. Several thousands waved flags, brandished their guns and chanted slogans against the coalition forces. Saudi-led coalition forces have been battling the Houthis for the past 6 months to try to restore President Mansour Hadi to power. Guatemalan authorities scrambled to search for victims of the mudslide that have left at least 7 dead and hundreds more missing. At least 26 bodies have so far been recovered from the village of El Combredos. In fact, heavy rain swept a torrent of boulders and mud onto houses on Thursday. The injured and homeless are being taken to makeshift shelters. On to sports news now. In cricket, Rohit Sharma's maiden T20 century went in vain as South Africa defeated India in the first T20 match by 7 wickets in Dharamshala on Friday. Batting first, India posted a total of 199 runs with some brilliant batting performances. In reply, AB de Villiers' 51, followed by a blazing 68 not out of 34 from JP Domini, helped the Proteas seal the game with 2 balls to spare. Here are the details.
Overs batsman is carving a special place for himself in world cricket. I think he's matured as a limited overs batsman. Got that 100 against Bangladesh.
Rohit Sharma's scintillating century with 106 runs couldn't save the Indian side as they lost their first T20 game of the 3-match series by 7 wickets against South Africa in Dharamshala on Friday evening. India's innings after being sent into bat revolved around a superb 106 of 66 balls by opener Rohit Sharma, ably supported by Virat Kohli's 43.
The 6 followed by a 4. Wonderful placement.
Sharma plundered 12 boundaries and 5 sixes in his maiden T20 century, displaying a spectacular array of strokes all around the ground.
The 6 followed by a 4.
Kohli became the first Indian batsman to score 1,000 T20 runs as he blazed his way to 3 sixes and a 4. The pair put on 138 of 74 balls for the second wicket after Shikhar Dhawan was run out for 3, attempting a second run.
Getting 100 for your country is always special, so I will cherish this, but unfortunately didn't come at the right time. I mean, we lost the game, so that's more disappointing than, how many runs you score doesn't matter really. If you don't win the game, then you're not happy.
In a high-scoring encounter, the tourists chased down India's challenging 199 for 5 with 2 deliveries to spare. Proteas began their innings with a rip-roaring opening stand of 77 from 53 balls between Hashim Amla and AB de Villiers. Amla hit 36 of 24 balls and de Villiers contributed a typically aggressive 51 from 32 deliveries that included 7 fours and a 6. JP Domini returned unbeaten on 68 that was studded with 7 sixes.
We've batted it together now a few times and I think our communication has improved every game. That was our main focus, just try and build on the partnership, and the run rate was sort of around the 12-13 mark, and that was our main focus for every over, just trying to keep it as close as possible to that 12-13 mark. And
South Africa leads the 3-match T20 series 1-0 and will play the second match in Cuttack on Monday and the third in Kolkata next Thursday. South Africa will also play 5 one-day internationals and 4 tests during their 10-week tour of India. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
Well, the Indian men's hockey team fared better. They started the New Zealand tour with a 3-1 victory against New Zealand A on Friday. Akashdeep Singh, Ramandeep Singh and Nikin Thimaiya scored a goal apiece to help India start off their New Zealand tour with a convincing victory. Akashdeep scored a counter-attack goal in the 3rd minute before Ramandeep scored a field goal to double the lead. Nikin Thimaiya then later scored the 3rd and sealed the game for India. In the 4th quarter of the match, both the teams pushed themselves harder to score more goals. The Indian forwards Ramandeep, Akashdeep and Nikin kept the New Zealand defenders busy and played most of the game in the opponent's half. India will again play New Zealand A on Saturday at the same venue. The first match against New Zealand's senior team will be played at Nelson on the 6th of October. The next 3 matches will be held on the 7th, 9th and 11th, and the last 2 matches will be held in Christchurch. But apathy towards sportspersons hit a new low after 28 Indian para-athletes were made to spend the night on a pavement. The hearing and speech impaired athletes who were going to participate in the 8th Asia Pacific Deaf Games in Chinese Taipei were left outdoors as they waited for their visa. The athletes, however, did manage to get the visa later on Friday. Sports Minister Sarbanand Sonowal has ordered an inquiry into the matter. Ill treatment of para-athletes in India, though, is nothing new. In March, the para-athletes were made to stay in harrowing conditions during the National Para-Athletics Championships.
बच्चे दिन में स्टेडियम में बैठ के आते हैं, नेहरू स्टेडियम में साई के ऑफिस में, बोलते हैं तुम्हारा वीजा कल हो जाएगा, कल हो जाएगा, ये कल करके टाल रहे हैं। ये बच्चे पिछले 4 दिन तो पहले ट्रैवल करके आए हैं, केरल से आए हैं, कर्नाटक से आए हैं, इंडिया के कोने कोने से बच्चे चुन के आए हैं। उन्हें दिल्ली में इस तरह से रखा गया है और रात को बच्चे बंगला साहब गुरुद्वारा में आके सोते हैं, खाते हैं। यहीं पर गुरुद्वारे में जगह नहीं है तो ये फुटपाथ पे सोते हैं ये बच्चे। ये देश का भविष्य है और तब यहाँ के गवर्नमेंट बोलते हैं कि मेडल नहीं आता है। कैसे आएगा इस देश में मेडल खिलाड़ियों के साथ अगर ऐसी बर्ताव रही तो?
Well, she couldn't have put that right, but that's all we have for you on the Breakfast News. Thanks so much for joining us.